The Miami Dolphins had just come off the 1972 undefeated season, won the Super Bowl. So I'm going down there to play on the world champion Miami Dolphins. I'm the 7th round draft pick. There's 6 picks before me that are down there. And if I had done the math and I was really a smart guy, I would have figured out there's no way I'm going to make this team. It's a week before the opening of the season, and it's Tuesday, and I'm on all the special teams. I don't know what that means. But Larry Zonk and Jim Kick and a couple other guys who had befriended me, they knew what it meant. That meant there was a dress rehearsal. If I was on the special teams on Tuesday, a week before the first game, I had made the final cut. It was a day later I was called into Shula's office, and he said, I got good news for you and bad news. And the bad news was they decided to go with a defensive end that had been cut by the Jets. So because of that little instance, I was out. But what I did like is I was going to be given a tryout by the Philadelphia Eagles. Growing up an Eagles fan is an understatement. The atmosphere of Franklin Field was very special. And I really fell in love with the Eagles during that period of time. My passion grew so much that at like age 13, my dad and my uncle and my brother, we would go to training camp, which was in Hershey, Pennsylvania. And this one particular day, I had one priority, and that was to get a couple autographs, and the 2 guys hot on my list were Tommy McDonald and Sonny Jurgensen. Let me fast forward you. Billy Kilmer was the starting quarterback for the Washington Redskins. Steve Zabel was the starting outside linebacker, and I was his backup. And during the course of the game, Steve tore his Achilles tendon. And I went into the game, and I played all of the 3rd quarter, and then Billy Kilmer got hurt. Got my call defensively, got in my position, and breaking the huddle was number 9, Sonny Jurgensen. And when he broke the huddle and came towards the line of scrimmage, I had an out-of-body experience. Because here I was as a 12 or 13-year-old getting his autograph. And here was this guy with a pot belly, a 1 single bar face mask, coming out and looking over the defense like he knew where we were all going. And I just said, I can't believe that I'm playing against the guy who was once my idol. So that was why it was always special for me, you know, to be playing with the Philadelphia Eagles, because it was a team I idolized coming up. We were playing an exhibition game in 1975 against the Pittsburgh Steelers again up in Pittsburgh. And in this exhibition game, I believe the guy that was returning the punts was Lynn Swan. And the first time I hit him, I caused a fumble. And I had beat a big tackle. I don't remember his first name. His last name was Reeves. So it was either the 3rd or 4th time, and this time somebody signaled for a fair catch, so it went over their head. And I again had beat Reeves down to the ball, but I was circling the ball as it was going, you know, it was coming to a halt, and I was going to down it. And I made the major mistake of not protecting myself, of not keeping my head on a swivel. Reeves had never stopped running and caught me in the left shoulder from an unbelievable angle and lifted me off the ground with himself. We were both airborne, and then I hit the ground again with him driving me into the AstroTurf. My shoulder was never the same then. And the theory that I got from a Dr. Ralph Markov in New York is that I probably had a small tear in my rotor cuff area or my labrum, and my regular body scar tissue would try to heal that during the week, and then I would run down into punts and kickoff the following Sunday and re-injure the tear. Well, my body had the unique ability to produce a scar tissue by the name of desmoid. Desmoid has one really bad property: it never stops growing. And then what happens is it continues to overgrow the scar area. It will compete for territory within the body. It will strangle off blood vessels, it will strangle off organs. Now, 12 doctors had probed me like you don't even want to be probed. They had touched this thing, pressed it, cajoled it, pushed it, you know, taken a look at x-rays. MRIs weren't around then. They had sample tissue. They were still misdiagnosed. I go to New York City. I wait 2 hours to see this Dr. Ralph Markov, this great orthopedic surgeon. And I go in, and he takes a look at my x-rays, tells me to take my shirt off, probed me for maybe 15 seconds, and said, "What you have, son, is you have a desmoid tumor." And when I finally went back to see him, he said, "We're going to have to amputate your arm." And not only my arm, but they ended up taking my shoulder and 5 ribs. So it's called a 4-quarter amputation, but he saved my life. It was this one particular day, I remember I had gotten all my tubes out of me, and they had gotten me up to walk that morning because they wanted to make sure that, you know, you were getting up on your feet. So I was happy to be alive. But then I had some time to sit by myself, and I actually started to wonder about, life now going forward. And, I'm playing professional football and for your favorite football team and being on top of the world for a couple years. This was quite a step down to know that I was missing my left arm, my left shoulder, and 5 ribs. And I started to have some pretty negative thoughts. And that morning I was visited by a very well-meaning volunteer of the hospital. His name was Frank. He was 62 years old or so. And I noticed immediately we had something in common. And the thing that we had in common is he was standing there with this volunteer jacket on, a white jacket, and he was missing his left arm. And one of the things he said to me was, I'm here to really establish for you a little program now that you are handicapped. So when Frank leaves the hospital that day, I'm still a little depressed because now I'm starting to dwell on all the things that I can't do one-handed. So anyway, during this negative thought process that I'm having and this spiraling down and these depressed moments, the nurse comes in and says, there's somebody on the phone that I think you'd like to talk to. And I got on the phone, and it happened to be a guy by the name of Rocky Blyer. Now see, prior to getting on the phone with Rocky, everybody that had come into my room that day or the day before had been very empathetic, very sympathetic. We're praying for you, sorry to hear about this. Oh my goodness, how do you feel? So everything was from a standpoint of enabling me to feel sorry for myself. I get this call from Rocky. And here was a guy that I knew had had a crisis of his own in Vietnam, where his leg was battered so badly in an ambush that they wanted to fuse his leg together at the knee. He refused to let that happen, went back. Art Rooney gave him 2 years to rehabilitate. He did. He came back to training camp, not only made the team, but played in 4 Super Bowls. We had a great chat, and it was great talking to him. He got my spirits up. He was very candid. Then at the end of the conversation, he said, any of the doctors or the nurses been in to talk to you about your limitations? And I said, no, but funny you should ask. There was this really well-meaning volunteer who came in today who kind of depressed the heck out of me. This guy's been around the block once or twice. He's been without an arm for 25 years. I think he's a little more of an expert than you and I. And that's what Rocky said, something I'll never forget. He said, Kevin, remember something about experts. Experts built the Titanic and amateurs built the Ark. Experts can be wrong. And so I followed his advice, and that was really the turning point of me saying, I got to figure out how I get on with life. You'll never be able to tie shoes again. It can't be done one-handed. Believe me, I've been trying for 25 years. And then he asked me to pull on his tie, and at that point I was really glad he didn't ask me to pull on his finger, but I pulled on his tie, and it was one of those clip-on ties that I had worn to school. As a little kid, my mother had 6 kids. She couldn't afford to spend the time tying everybody's tie, so I had those clip-on ties. And it came off my hand, and I said, yeah, I recognize this. And he said, these are clip-on ties. And he said, if you go down to 5th and Madison Avenue, he said, there's a little store down there, and if you use my name, they'll give you a 10% discount. But make sure you get a dozen. Everybody always calls me up. They get a couple. And make sure you get a dozen so you don't have to go back to the store again. And I said, why will I need clip-on ties? He said, you'll never be able to tie your tie again. It can't be done one-handed. Believe me, I've been trying for 25 years. As a result of losing my arm, I've got this tremendous opportunity now of going around and being a motivational speaker. And I get to talk to people about overcoming obstacles. And if I can help people just see that there's light at the end of the tunnel and that sometimes bad things happen that result in very good future endeavors, then I want to get that message across to them. One of the things I find extremely fulfilling is I'm doing some work with the amputees at Walter Reed Hospital. And some of them are double amputees with these bombs, and some of them are women. The bombs have been very indiscriminatory over in Iraq. They want to know, what do I need to do to carry on my life? What do I need to do to get active again? What kind of job am I capable of doing? I can help them through these troubling times, but I got to tell you, I'm getting more out of it than they are. I have no regrets. I wished I had done some things differently, but I didn't. I can't change those. And as I tell people in my speeches, the only thing that I can control is my attitude and how I approach things every day. With all the theologians out there and all the philosophers who have all these different interpretations of the final judgment day, wouldn't it be funny if your God said to you, here's the deal. The deal is I'm going to count the number of times you got knocked down, and I'm going to count the number of times you got back up. And I know I gave you some challenges, but if you got up one more time and you got knocked down and you had faith, that's all I asked. That was the game. And think about this. If coming off the mat of life one more time, getting up, then you got knocked down and you brought another human being or two up with you, would there be any all-merciful God that would keep you out of the gates of heaven? I don't think so.
When we come back, Kevin Reilly joins us here to talk about football, veterans, and the airwaves. Don't go away.